Welcome to HE Jobs and Expert Opinion. I'm Tim Winkler and delighted to introduce you to Professor Mike Thelwall, a researcher from the University of Wolverhampton who has published a fascinating paper looking at whether it's better to have a highly cited colleague or a highly productive colleague as your co-author. Now, this research is really fascinating. On the surface, it could be just a metric about metrics, but a quick peek underneath what's going on there raises a whole host of questions relating to research productivity, rankings, and what we value in the work that universities do. Mike, welcome, and thanks so much for your time today. Can you tell us about what you found? Give us a bit of an overview of what you found when you examined whether successful co-authors were more important than first authors in publishing highly cited papers.
Okay, thanks very much, Tim. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. So I looked at the journal articles produced by authors all around the world in all subject areas, and I tried to use some proxy measures to work out whether more successful or more experienced authors help to produce higher quality journal articles. And there are no direct measures of the quality or value of journal articles. So what I used was a proxy measure, which was the type of journal impact factor for the article. So the idea is that, doubly indirect idea is that if you publish in a more highly cited journal, then it's more likely that your article is higher quality on average. So this is a statistical thing. So some more highly cited journals are not so good. Some low cited journals are good. So, it's not really it's not a binary thing, but it's a useful statistical proxy for quality. So I looked to see what factors associated with whether an article got published in a more highly cited journal. And I looked at two types of author properties. First of all, how many articles the author's published, either the first author as usually the most important author in an article, or the maximum of the team, and also how high the impact of the journals that they published in was, either the first author or the team. So I had 4 factors to check for every article published in 2017. So I looked at articles published in 2017 and then looked at the author characteristics based on articles 2014 to 2020. So a bit complicated. So I looked at 2014 to 2020 to see how good the authors were, how productive, how highly cited the work was. And I looked at just 2017 to see the influence on individual articles.
How many articles overall would that have been, roughly?
Millions. I forget the exact number, but millions of articles altogether. So I looked at the whole of science as reflected in Scopus for Scopus journal articles for 2017. And in the UK, that's the vast majority of articles produced by academics get into Scopus. So it's not comprehensive, but it's a big set.
And do you want to then tell us a bit about what you found there?
Generally, if you had a first author or a team member that was more productive, you tended to have a little bit of an advantage in terms of the impact of the journal you published in. But that wasn't quite universal, especially for the first author. In some situations, it was a disadvantage to have a more productive first author when you're trying to publish in a highly cited journal. So that was a disadvantage in some physical sciences and some life sciences, but elsewhere it tended to be an advantage. And having either a first author or a team that published more highly cited research during their careers was a more substantial advantage when trying to get a highly cited journal. The most important factor was the citation impact of the authors, and the productivity, number of articles written, was also important, but it could be unimportant or even negative in 2 of the areas, the life sciences and physical sciences.
So if I'm sitting around in the tea room and, I'm looking at a cast of colleagues who I might like to write a paper with next, it's possible if I want to have a highly cited paper, it's likely that I should go for perhaps a less busy, but a more highly cited colleague than someone who's very busy but actually is publishing papers that aren't seen so much. Is that a fair outcome?
Exactly, that's exactly it. Yes, so look for the one that publishes in more highly cited journals, particularly, and that's your best. That will be your most statistically your most helpful author. Obviously, there'll be lots of exceptions, but statistically, that's your best choice.
So why did you start looking at this, Mike? Because it's a fascinating area, and not many other people seem to have looked at this in the past, perhaps.
I talk to people who try to kind of game the system by getting particular types of authors to help them with their work. So I think sometimes if you're writing a paper and you struggle to get your papers accepted in journals, then you might think, well, I need someone to help me to get it published, because I think I can do the research, but I can't get it published. So you might look around for people that you don't know and send random emails to people that you think are suitable. So then you have two choices. You can go for someone who writes a lot, and you might think, well, that experience is going to be a lot of help. Or you could go for someone who doesn't really write much, but when they do write something, it's really good. So this study shows that the second one is really the better choice. It doesn't really prove that that genuinely will help if you've already done the study. My guess is that you would need to involve these researchers right from the start to help you the overall design of the research.
Do you think it's possible that there's a cult of celebrity in academia where people tend to follow or search for certain people who have built up credibility and a certain number of papers, and that is one of the factors that might lead to a highly cited author attracting more citations for their future work?
I don't really know. I suspect there's some of that goes on, but on the other hand, there's probably an opposite tendency that if you see an author that's published really good work, you think, well, they won't want to work with me, especially if you're starting off. So you might go for a more mid-range author because you think, okay, well, they're good enough to help me, but they're not so good that they won't want to help me or will be too busy to help me. So, yeah, I don't really know which way it goes. We need a lot of evidence to work that one out.
I'm sure it's the same case in the UK, but universities in many countries now seem to be spending some time looking at ways to improve their rankings. And one of the ways they can do that is improving their citation rates. And so work like this actually could be quite significant for universities wanting to blend it into their strategies for how they improve their rankings. Do you think, did you have that in mind when you started looking at this?
And not the ranking specifically, to be honest, but just the general idea that if there are any ways to improve research, then we should be going for them. So if it's encouraging particular mixes of researchers, then that would be fantastic. If there's a way that we can help junior researchers progress more quickly than they're currently doing, then that would be wonderful for science itself. So to be honest, personally, I'm not so bothered about the rankings, but things that would improve science or improve individual scientific careers, I think would be useful to do. So this information might help management decisions. Yeah, maybe even individual scholars thinking about their work and, as you suggested, looking for collaborations as a way to improve.
Well, we talked a little bit earlier about how you have a real interest in seeing how younger researchers can grow. Is this another case of perhaps it's important to work smarter and not harder, that doing a lot of work isn't necessarily going to lead to great outcomes if it's not well read?
Yes, I think there's definitely an element of that. So publishing for its own sake doesn't seem to help the quality of articles. So it's the quality of your other work is the biggest pointer to the quality of your future work rather than productivity. But I did wonder about the life and physical sciences, where inexperienced first author was an advantage for quality, and I wondered why that was, and I wondered if it was because these tended to be projects with a lot of data gathering that a senior academic maybe wouldn't have the time to do. So maybe a PhD project where the researcher spends ages gathering painstaking data, and maybe the analysis stage doesn't need to be incredibly sophisticated, but they can still make major breakthroughs by carefully and expertly going through their data gathering steps. So that's just a guess, but that would be interesting, and it would show that in these areas, particularly junior researchers, are particularly valuable to the progress of science.
That's really fascinating. I had one further avenue that I just wanted to explore with you. Imagine you're the head of a department. You're under pressure to chase more grants, get more impact metrics, maybe bring on more research students. But this research is telling you that maybe your staff should be spending time doing less high value work. How's that going to make you feel? Do you think it's a bit of a challenge and a contradiction in terms of how universities are managed?
That's a tricky one. I guess the lesson would be just focus on the quality of the research more than the amount of research done. So in the UK, we have a system where you only really get credit for 5 papers over the 7-year ref cycle. So we already have a kind of a break on the national incentive to do research at 5 outputs over this period. So and I think that's probably helpful for the quality of research. Whereas if you had another system which rewarded you, say, for every article you output, then this suggests that it wouldn't be helpful for quality, or certainly not as helpful as focusing directly on quality for the research that you produce.
Thanks, Mike. Lastly, do you have any thoughts on progressing this research further? Where could this take you?
Well, I'd love to look directly at the quality of the research, but we don't have the data for that. We don't have direct data on research quality, and that would be useful to check if any of the results of this are due to journal specific rather than quality specific. And I'd also like to talk to a lot of people to find out if the role of the junior researchers genuinely is different in the physical and life sciences compared to other areas, health sciences and social sciences, arts and humanities. So if there really was a difference, then that would be useful and interesting to know, mainly interesting, really.
And I'd say most useful as well. Mike, thanks very much for your time. It's really fascinating, raises a lot of questions and points of interest in the way that we create great and positive working environments for academic staff. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Pleasure to talk to you.